Good morning. You're on the Success Secrets for Business, Family, and Life channel. I'm Vicki Helm. This is the Coffee Break Show. And guess what? Today's guest is Dr. Melissa Kalt, and we are going to have the most incredible conversation. But first, we always have to hear the music, right? So I'll see you in a second. You know, today is kind of weird. We have weird internet things going on, and we are just going to go right past those weird internet things going on right now, and we're going to continue with the show. And I just want to welcome you to one of the most powerful conversations. You know, I want to move this kind of thing right here. Everybody knows. Boom. There it is. So, Melissa, welcome to the Coffee Break Show today. I see everybody popping on. I see you guys jumping on board. We are with Dr. Melissa Kalt, who is one of the, I believe you were one of the top doctors in the country at one point, and you decided to leave your medical practice to go ahead and pursue something that was, hey, I just want to say good morning to everybody. I see you guys popping on. Thank you for joining the conversation. But let me get through introducing her, and then I'll say hi to you guys, and she'll say hi to you guys as well. So what happened was she left the medical industry and now is incorporated trauma. And I want to talk to you about why you went from being one of the top doctors in the country and decided to move to trauma, and what was the kind of percolation in you that said, okay, this isn't working, I need to move over here.
Oh, thank you. That's a great question, Vicki. And there were more than one thing. It was sort of like this convergence of many things that made me make that decision. One of which was, despite sitting on the top doctors list for U.S. doctors, it's like top 3% or whatever. I was really diligent. I'd always been an overachiever, perfectionist, and I kept finding that there were things that Western medicine, traditional medicine, just could not solve. And it was so disheartening to have someone come sit in my office, say a 40-something-year-old woman who's absolutely exhausted, so exhausted that she couldn't enjoy her kids. She couldn't advance her career. Wow. She couldn't enjoy her husband. She couldn't enjoy her life. Everything felt like work. And from a doctor standpoint, it's like, you make sure she's not anemic and her thyroid's normal and vitamin D is normal. And then your response is kind of like, I don't know, sleep more. And it just was not, it wasn't feel good for them. It wasn't feel good for me because I genuinely wanted to help people. And so I had already been struggling with this issue and exploring how is trauma landing in the body? How is trauma causing a lot of these chronic conditions, chronic pain, migraines, GI issues, whether it's heartburn or irritable bowel or whatever. And then I hit in my own personal life, my own situation where my kids and I were traumatized. And I decided, no, I am going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to figure this out so that they are not sitting on a therapist's couch when they're 40 trying to unhook all of their trauma, or they're not the one seeing the doctor who's telling them, I don't know, sleep more. There just had to be a better way.
It's so interesting that you're saying this because, and Lisa, I want to say welcome. Nice to see you gone. MJ, Robin, nice to have you guys on. One of the things that has caught me about this time in history, I mean, never before this time in history. And I want to let everybody know, I know that I'm having internet problems and my face may look a little fuzzy to you, etc. The internet problem will clear itself up, hopefully very soon. But yeah, we're a little shy on the camera working well. So it'll get over there. We'll get over there. But I want to go back to the thing that I think is interesting right now, Melissa, that is so important about what you just said. That thing, here's the pill, here's this, you're not anemic, just sleep, and it wasn't working. I believe for myself, and I'm no doctor, that the world is experiencing trauma after trauma after trauma, just based on the amount of chaos that we're experiencing right now. So, for instance, that mass shooting that just happened yesterday, and that Christmas parade in, I believe you live in the state as well, in Wisconsin,
I
that
live in the
is,
city, Waukesha. Yeah,
I'm, yeah, in Waukesha. That's right. And I believe these kinds of traumas, they just keep playing out in public over and over and over and over again. And we just have these, now we have public trials on, and it's kind of dividing us. And I think for the first time in history, we actually have global trauma happening at once. Do you agree with that? There's some sort of thing that's happening to our body, our peace, our mind because of the current traumas we're in right now.
absolutely. And one of the things that I've always seen, or for many years, is realizing that physical symptoms, mental symptoms, emotional symptoms are messages from the body showing us where the trauma lies in us so we can heal it and become whole. And I believe that the same thing is happening with the global traumas, that they're showing us where in society, where in the world, where in our global thought process, where things are broken or wrong, where we're living with false beliefs, false imprints that are making us show up in a particular way, behave in a particular way collectively, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to beat you over the head until you get it.
Mm-hmm.
We see that. I see that
Yeah.
with. I saw that with patients. I now see that with clients. You know, if you use the old mantra of just sort of distracting yourself and dismissing it and not paying attention to it, it'll just yell louder. I mean, it's just going to
Yeah.
become more. And
And
I
hide
think
from it.
right. And I think we're in this phase where the world is screaming right now. You know, the
Yes.
collective global world that is an entity in and of itself is screaming right now for healing.
This is so interesting what you're saying right now, because um, there has been an uptick in heart attacks, blood clots, and there was a third one that was a stroke. That is an uptick right now in that hospitals, emergency hospitals, are seeing more of that around the world. And one of the things I want to talk about, um, I don't know how far we can go with this, but I also think the media is traumatizing because we can't actually we have opinions, but not truth and facts. And I
Yep.
think being in that confusion is part of the chaos, what's true and what's not true. And what happens is, instead of just having the truth, we have to go on a hunt for truth. Or we believe that the truth is our opinion that has been validated. Thus, that's the truth. And we're not actually living in some form of truth. And I think our discernment and our reason and our divisiveness, I don't know if this has been purposely done, but I think our ability to have clear thinking, critical thinking, has been traumatized as well in as a globe. And my thing is, and what I really want to get deep into, is how do we begin to, one, find ourselves again after such big trauma? How do we begin to take care of our beingness? Because I believe the thing that we're not looking at is how much this trauma stress is playing in our body and in our ability to even manifest a life that we think is reasonable.
Oh, absolutely. And with regard to your comments about the media, I know you know, but for those who don't, one of the groups of people that I love working with are people who are extracting themselves from narcissistic relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
the world, we are all being gaslit. We're being
Mm-hmm.
gaslit by politicians. We're being gaslit by the
Yeah.
media. We're being gaslit by our friends and family on social media, who
Mm-hmm.
are, and that's what's causing the divisiveness, because these tactics that create trauma are completely out of control, and which is part of the
Yes.
reason why my mission, even though I live in this place of abundance, internal abundance,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and growth and possibility, inspiration, and why one of the reasons I've started shining this light into the darkness is because without being able to see it and without being able to name it, we don't even know what's happening to us. And it will only get worse.
Yes, and that's the thing. If we don't know what's happening to us, it has the only potential for it to have is to get worse. I want to let everybody in the audience know if you have a question for Dr. Melissa Kalt, you can ask your question in the comments. I promise I will ask her. We are talking about trauma, and she is an expert in narcissistic trauma. And I just want a little bit, how did you get to the point where you became an expert in that after being one of the top doctors in the country?
You know, it took a long time. It's really taken essentially a lifetime. And going through, you know, experiences with narcissists in my family of origin, narcissists in previous relationships. There's really more narcissists in my life than one can count. And I continued. I was really very well groomed to be a narcissist victim, but I don't ever want to sit in the place of being a victim. I'd like to step into empowerment. And so, you know, in terms of learning about what was going on and trying to sort it out, you know, initially years ago in therapy myself, but then the exploration and the study and integrating the knowledge that I already had about trauma otherwise into what I was seeing with people who were suffering from narcissistic abuse, and incorporating or integrating the internal abundance that knowing that no matter what happens, like if I was homeless tomorrow, I'd still be fine. Like because I know that so solidly in myself. In terms of incorporating all of that, that's what's allowed me to shift to become anti-fragile. Where there's
I love that word.
I just, and I love being here. There's nothing that challenge makes me stronger. There's nothing that's going to shake me at this point. And so that study, you know, there's not a lot out. Most of my experience with narcissists were covert narcissists, which is a very distinct type, and it's not the type that most people think of, but I personally think they're the most dangerous because they're so hidden.
Yes.
And there's not much written about them. Therapists don't understand them. The court system definitely doesn't recognize them. The church doesn't recognize them. People in the community don't recognize it. And I thought, you know what, someone has got to like figure this out and learn as much as I can, and then take it and take off with it, because there are people in the world who need it. So a lot of that was really self-study, you know, in trying to heal myself and my family's trauma, and then really share that experience and what I learned with the world.
Thank you. We already have a pop of a question. What are the signs of a covert narcissist?
So a covert narcissist is also called like a vulnerable narcissist. They are not at all what you would think about as a typical narcissist. They're extremely likable. They're friendly. They're charming. They're the life of the party. They're the ones that tell the great jokes. They have a very self-deprecating sense of humor. And they don't get their narcissistic supply, which is, you know, their like energy source, from praise and admiration. They do, but that's not their primary or chosen way, like it is for a grandiose narcissist, say. They get it from essentially torturing other people by devaluing you so severely. So it might be passive aggressive put downs. It might be triangulating, you know, where when you were talking about what we're seeing globally and through the media, and even who's validating our viewpoints, there's all this triangulation, you know, go tell someone, you know, this and tell someone else that. And then now those two people hate each other. And the covert narcissist is just back watching the drama, loving it. And they get to be the best friend of both of them. Oh, I'm here for you. You know, I'm so sorry you're going through this. They stirred the whole pot. They caused the whole thing. So they're very sneaky. They're very insidious. Most romantic relationships with a covert narcissist go 10, 20, 30, 40 or more years. People don't realize that they're being abused. They just die a little bit more each day more exhausted, more losing who they are, more self-doubt, because it's so flippin' subtle, they don't even know what's happening. And then when they do leave, the covert narcissists use flying monkeys more so. I think they love their flying monkeys than the other types of narcissists. And so they will take all of your family, your friends, your business relationships, and the victim
Oh,
ends
I
up being
see.
the crazy one.
Mm. This is so interesting. There's a couple of things I want to unpack right now. Does the narcissist even know they're a narcissist or have narcissistic behavior?
You know, there's a range, and I think some do for sure and some don't. They have all experienced significant childhood trauma, and this is
Mhm.
their adaptive mechanism. Narcissists in general live in extreme scarcity, and scarcity and fear, as you know, go together. Abundance and love go together on the other end of the spectrum. They're in
That's right.
extreme scarcity and fear. They are operating from a place of survival all of the time. So, and they have no sense of self. They have a very fragile ego. They have no sense of self. So they're always going to choose to put you down to raise them up, or to make you look bad to the flying monkeys so they get all this support. Um,
Interesting.
and I don't
They're
know
the
that
kind that would throw you under the bus without thinking twice because their need is unmet. And
right.
are you saying that this need that's unmet, as you're talking, I'm unpacking my history as you talk, which is so interesting. And there was a point in my lifetime, my parents they made their living illegally, and thus they didn't want anybody to know what they knew or they didn't know. So there were things I knew, which was, my name and things when I was a little girl. And there was things that I was supposed to tell the truth on, and things that I was supposed to not tell the truth on. And there were times when we were in situations where, in my lifetime, one that popped up while you were talking was that we were in a cab and the cab driver was just making small talk with my family. And the guy said, "What's your name?" And my father gave just this completely different name. And I was so confused. And I said, "I thought our name was blah, blah, blah." And oh my gosh, I got in trouble for that. So as I grew up, the confusion about when to tell the truth and when not to tell the truth, what I learned was you tell the truth or lie when it benefits you. That's how you learn it. That's how a lot of people are in the world, based on I'm going to tell the truth or I'm going to tell the lie, based on how it's going to give, what repercussions it's going to give me. And I did this for a long time, till the very first time I really fell in love. And I thought, what's the best, most important thing I could ever give someone that I wanted to give this relationship? And I told myself, no matter what happened, I would never lie to this person ever. And in that instance, lucky for me, that healed me, although I thought it was going to heal her, because that way I would keep out of the confusion. There would be no confusion because I would always be. And I didn't realize till after that how much confusion I was in or had caused by having that behavior and learning that behavior. And I'm wondering how much of narcissism is learned, and that most people don't even know whether they're narcissistic or not. They're just trying to figure out how to get through their life, not having some sense of who they actually are. And I think, wow, that would be a painful way to be. But then you kind of bleed that pain on everyone else. Yes.
Yes. And
What are your
it's a
thoughts about that?
fantastic question, because there are so many behaviors. One of the things that I'm all about is creating this awareness of the behaviors so people recognize
Mm-hmm.
what deflection is. Well, most of the population deflects, and less than 10% of the
Mm-hmm.
population are narcissists. projection, the triangulation, gaslighting, all of these behaviors, anyone can use those. And a lot of people will use them, like you mentioned, if it benefits me, I'm going to manipulate someone versus not. And that doesn't necessarily make them a narcissist. They've learned how to use the narcissistic tactics or behaviors to their advantage.
I see.
The difference is narcissists, there's a few really key things. And one of the things that any narcissist victim will agonize over for years is, am I the narcissist? Because when you're in a situation, say there's a gaslighting situation, say I said to you, hey, Vicki, do you remember when we had such and such conversation? And you're like, no, that never happened. And then I'm like, am I gaslighting you or are you gaslighting me? Like, as the victim,
yes, that's so interesting.
Like, what, what even happened here? And so victims commonly sit in this, am I the narcissist? And the way that I always encourage people to tell is narcissists don't have empathy, or if they have empathy, they have very, very little. So they don't understand how other people are feeling. They don't feel how other people are feeling. They are great at faking it, crying when they see something, whatever, but they don't actually have empathy. They're not self-reflective. The narcissist is never going to ask themselves, am I the narcissist? They don't have that in them. They don't tend to be honest people. You had the ability to flip the switch and become honest. Narcissists are pathological liars. They lie about big things. They lie about small things. They lie about verifiable things, and they'll totally deny it. Even look at in the media just recently. I'm in Wisconsin, so Aaron Rodgers and this situation has been in the media a lot, and he said on an interview that he had COVID toe, and then he's upset with the Wall Street Journal for saying he had COVID toe. But he said it, right? Like, it's verifiable. It's recorded. How many thousands of people saw it? He tweeted it, and yet he's gonna deny it. So the lying, a healthy person who's using, or a sort of healthy person who's using unhealthy tactics, has the ability to become honest. A narcissist, they really don't. They're not committed to personal growth and development. They don't have a sense of,
I gotta know. Because I don't know, because I'm exploring this with you and unpacking it with you. There are two things for me that I'm wondering. One is narcissism considered a mental illness, or is there a possibility that it could be a brain injury or some chemical imbalance, or is this just behavior? I mean, to me, I'm just curious about that.
There is a spectrum for sure in terms of the mental health diagnoses, the DSM, that psychiatrists and stuff use. It is listed as a personality disorder.
Interesting.
But there are 9 criteria. You have to have a certain number of them to meet criteria. Part of the trouble is the coverts are never going to go in and present themselves as having any criteria, because they're going to bullshit the therapist and tell them exactly what they want to hear. So they don't really get picked up in the traditional diagnostic way. But in terms of someone having a brain injury, or if they've had a brain tumor, it may be more likely that they have lost their filter.
That's right.
Commonly, that they've lost their filter. They've lost maybe some of their executive functioning and knowing when to hold back and not, say exactly what is on their mind and that sort of thing. But it doesn't. So some of the behaviors may be the same, but that's just a behavior and not actually becoming narcissistic.
It's so interesting because there's like the spectrum of narcissism is so vast, and it sounds like you can have some behaviors that are narcissistic, and I understand now why you say the covert narcissism is so absolutely damaging, because you can be with somebody 30, 40 years without even knowing that. And the thing I want to get across too, because I know for me, I just don't think, and maybe it's because I have a good sense of who I am, I just don't think that anyone could step into my life and chip away at me enough for me to lose me. And I'm trying to figure out, a narcissist has to look for a certain type of person. A narcissist has to look for a certain type of behavior within a person. Is that correct? And then
Yeah.
that behavior is the thing they glom onto, or how does that happen? Because it looks so different in my mind if you have a good sense of yourself, it would have to be somebody who is masterful at manipulation in ways that I think would be completely dehumanizing.
And it is, and it's exactly for the reasons you mentioned. It's like it's inconceivable that someone could do these things, that the rest of the world doesn't see it. So in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what they look for, they're looking for a few things. They're looking for people who are compassionate with big hearts, because those people are going to have
Mm.
sympathy towards them. They're looking for people who are empathic, people, who feel what other people are feeling. I'm a super empath. It's
Interesting.
part of the way I pull trauma out of
Mm-hmm.
people, because I can feel it in their body and pull it out. And so someone who's
Interesting.
very empathic is a
Mm-hmm.
massive target for any type of narcissist. And then someone who elevates their status. So someone who is either attractive or has a lot of money or is very successful or powerful or connected, or something that's going to elevate the narcissist's status. They also love people who have already had relationships with narcissists in the past, whether those are parents or siblings or previous
Ah,
relationship, because they've already been
of
sort of
course.
groomed. So,
That's
and
right.
then the narcissist is going to test. They test as time goes. So in the beginning, they're essentially copying exactly who you are. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're someone who loves to have these deep spiritual conversations, you know what? They love to have deep spiritual conversations. And if you like to just kick back with a beer and watch
Mm.
football and not really talk about much at the end of the day, that's exactly what they like to do. And if you're, a morning person, they're a morning person. If you're a hiker, they're a hiker. They it's like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, this person is like the person I've always been looking for. Like we
Mm.
fit so well.
So interesting.
They mirror your love language. If you're a hugger, they're a hugger.
They
And
they mirror your love language. So interesting.
yeah, and so it's so subtle. What they're doing in this initial phase is they're creating the lens for how you see them. So when they do something ridiculous in the future, whether that's you've caught them in a lie, you've caught them, doing whatever, they say something mean, you take it through the lens of, oh, you know what, they just had a rough childhood. They, he was just triggered. He didn't mean anything by that. Or she, was
Yeah.
just having a bad day. And you just kind of like
Mhm.
let it go in a way that you never would otherwise. But they walk you down this path, and then they test you with something. They'll do something like, kind of ridiculous. Maybe they, I don't know, spent an extra $500 that they weren't supposed to out of your joint account or whatever. And then they're like,
Mm.
wait, but we've had 4 good years together. You wouldn't really throw it all away over $500, would you? You put money more important than people? And you're like, holy crap, am I like a total bitch? Like, what the heck's the matter with me? And
Yeah,
it's
I get that.
it's
Wow.
so subtle. And so that's a test,
Yes.
or you tell them they're not allowed to borrow your car and they take your car anyway. Well, if you're not calling the police and reporting the car is missing, it's kind of like when you give
Yes.
a toddler a
Total
cookie.
disregard for any boundary.
Right, now they're just gonna
Wow.
do it again. They've learned, they
Wow.
tested you and you went for it. So now you're
Yep, you
a
set a
long-term
precedent.
source of supply.
Wow, this is so interesting. And it's, for me, it is a lot of work to stay in a narcissistic relationship. And it is a lot of work also to be in a healthy relationship, because in that healthy relationship, you have to know what your boundaries are and your partner's boundaries. It's like no matter what, you have to get good at getting to know you, what you're about, and how not to be manipulated by that. And this is what I want to thank you, Lisa. It is a great topic. This is, to me, I'm just fascinated by this whole subject because I've known about it, I've listened about it, but I haven't really understood it in the way that we're understanding it now. And in order to heal trauma, sometimes we have to unpack what has happened, how it happened, where the holes in the boat were, so that we can patch them up and have some absolute kind of sense of self. I want to, because I know there are people out there, men and women, that have been through narcissistic abuse right now. And maybe they're in the relationship or they've just left the relationship. What are maybe 3 things that you could tell them that are going to help them piece themselves back together after something like this happens?
That's a great question. The first thing really is awareness and insight. So that's going to be the stage of consuming information. It's part of the reason that I'm posting on a lot of platforms, YouTube and writing and all over the place. So because people like to consume information differently, but to really understand, I can say that even within, say, the last 2 months, I've had new insights into someone's behavior, say from 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Like, oh,
Wow.
I didn't see that was this tactic. I get it now.
Wow.
So having the awareness and the insight, empathic people like to figure things out. They like things to make sense. They want to understand, like, because
Yeah.
they have like this Pollyanna. I'm speaking for myself and for all of us. We have this like Pollyanna view of the world, like everyone should just love each other and then everyone would be happy. And like, how can this possibly happen? Why would someone do
Guilty.
this to me? Right? Like, why would someone do that to anyone else? It doesn't make sense. I can't wrap my head around it. And so when you're sitting in that place and you start to learn and you recognize it, it starts to really make sense. So that's a big piece. Extracting the narcissistic abuse from your mind is going to be another really big step. Getting out of the relationship, whether it's a business partner, whether it's a friend, whether it's a spouse, extracting yourself and then extracting it from your mind, because what you find is they create so much through the gaslighting and everything else. They create so much self-doubt. I have people tell me all the time, like, if my ex-husband said that, I got a DUI, I assume it must have happened and I can't find the paperwork, even though they have like no memory of that, because they believe the narcissist memories more than their own. So work with a therapist to really like unhook that mentally is really important. And then the final thing, and this is the part that pretty much everyone skips, and I actually break it into 5 steps, but I combined 2 and 3 there, so I'll combine 4 and 5. And that's extracting the trauma from the physical body, and then really connecting to the truth of who you are. Because the reality is, when something happens, so the way that I like to explain trauma is it's something that exceeds your body's or your being's capacity or ability to cope in that moment. So 2 things could happen, or the same thing could happen to identical people. One person could have a near miss, car accident or a car accident on the freeway, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm the luckiest person ever. I had an angel on my shoulder. I'm not hurt. I'm walking away.
Yeah.
Just the car is damaged. Life is amazing, right? And someone
That's
else
right.
could have the exact same accident and they walk away, oh my gosh, I'm the most unlucky person ever. Everything bad
That's right.
always happens to me. I'm never safe in this world. I should just never drive on the freeway again. Now I have to pay money, whatever. So they're traumatized by something because they didn't have the capacity to cope with it in that moment. And that trauma will go get stored in the body for you to deal with later. So even if it's that, you were 2 and your mom went into the hospital to have her gallbladder taken out and it was no big deal, she was going to come home and be fine, but you were terrified you were never going to see your mother again, that trauma landed in your body. It's told you that you're not safe, that you have a fear of loss or whatever, and that will come up later in terms of some physical, mental, psychological, emotional, spiritual symptom. And so what happens is if we leave the trauma there, we're not connected to the truth of who we are. It's not like, if you got punched in the arm, it's not like the being punched in the arm is physically stored there. It's the belief you had about yourself because of it. I'm not good enough, or I deserve to be punished because I was wrong or I was bad. There's some sort of belief about yourself that's what is the trauma that's actually stored there. And so when you extract that trauma and you connect to the truth of who you are, you align with yourself as, your divine being, the real truth of who you are in a way that you can move forward that's totally different. And no one, those are the 2 pieces that I help people do, extracting the trauma and the connecting to who you are. And no one goes there. People stop at the therapy, the 3rd step, but they haven't actually healed it. And then they get into a relationship again with someone who
And
does
that just
this.
processes right again.
Exactly.
This is
Exactly.
so incredible what you're saying, because I just think you said something earlier that I want to go over, and one of them, and because I think it's so important. How can, or what are some things someone can do to begin to meet themselves, who they actually are, and find themselves in what is, what does it mean to find yourself, and what are ways that you can find yourself? Because when you are unpacking and you get to know who you are, how do you get to know who you are? Especially after you're unpacking all this trauma, how do you know what's you and what's the trauma? How do you separate those 2 things?
Oh, it's a great question, and they're actually one and the same. So one of the things that I had learned to do early on, because I wasn't listening um, to myself, to like who I was at all, was to start asking myself questions, almost like I have 5 kids, almost like I would have with a toddler. Would you like an apple or a pear for your snack? Do you want to wear this shirt or that shirt? And then actually making myself
Mm.
decide, not like my mind being like, oh, you should wear purple today because of this background or whatever, like not the mind, but actually like listening to myself, even just about these simple things, because there was no way that I would make decisions about big huge things in my personal life. Professionally it was still great, but so it was that little, or someone invites you to go somewhere. Do I actually want to go, or
Beautiful.
am I saying I should go? And so one of the things that I do now too, I rank everything on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being hell yes, 1 being hell no, and I don't do anything below an 8 ever. Um,
Beautiful. Say that again. That was so incredible. A 10 being a hell yes, 1 being a hell no, and I don't do anything below an 8. That's
nope.
such a great piece of advice. And if you're, don't worry if you're listening and you're driving in your car, don't worry. You can catch the replay and hit this again. That was a fantastic piece. That was that was a spoiler alert truth bomb. I don't do anything below an 8. Oh, God, that's great.
And to come back to the other part of your question, Vicki, how do you distinguish what is you and how do you distinguish what is the trauma?
Yes.
So often we're taught to like avoid or be ashamed of these
Oh,
negative
yeah.
emotions or negative feelings or whatever, but those are a part of you too. So if, it's funny because I always would see myself in percentages, like some percentage, maybe regarding some issue, some fear that's come up in my business, 99.3% of me is excited about it and 0.7% is scared. Well, those are both real. Those are both me. And focusing on the 99.3% part of me that's excited, which is what the entire population and all entrepreneurs do, by the way, will not work. Because the little 0.7% is going to scream louder, louder, louder until it's acknowledged and it's seen and heard, because it's part of me too. And when I first, back maybe 10 years ago, I might be 50-50. I really had no idea which end was up. And now it really is generally like 99% of me, is aligned with one thing, but there's this little piece that's scared about something. And here's the part that's super cool, because I love working with entrepreneurs too. We're like personal development on steroids, right?
That's right.
And the thing is, the ego, not the ego that thinks you're so great, but the egoic part of yourself that is afraid and in scarcity. It's a little narcissist. It's gaslighting you. When you have a fear that kicks up that says you're not good enough, it's freaking gaslighting you, because it's not possible. When you're connected to that internal abundance, it's not possible for me to not be good enough. It's just,
that's right.
I'm a divine being. It's not flipping possible. So that little ego is the one that's telling you you're invisible, or you might screw this up, or maybe you're going to lose all your friends and family if you do this, or maybe that's afraid of success, that's afraid of not being successful. I mean, I always love it when you have both of those fears at the same time. Afraid of being too successful, afraid of being not successful enough.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Melissa, I just want to say this is so important what you're talking about, because again, as we're talking, I'm unpacking my conversations with myself, etc. And I want to talk specifically to the person that's listening right now that just kind of blew by what she just said. Now, I want to tell you, trauma, when it's stored in your body, I remember for myself, I did not talk about what happened to me in my, and I'm speaking to men right now, because men are really, I don't talk about what happened to me. But those people who don't talk about what happened to you, I didn't talk about literally what happened to me in my childhood till I was 40, and the amount of stress and the amount of missed opportunity and the amount of pressure. I was a little younger, maybe 35 is when I finally started talking about what happened. When you unpack what happened to you and understand the difference between who you are and what happened to you, because they're vastly different. That piece of it that she just uncovered with us, that ability to find who you are, that's how you grow quality of life. If you don't, you can be just like I was, which was wealthy, have everything, all the cars, the money, the this, the that, and everything, and you will still be unhappy, because there is no band-aid for this part of it. This is where the real work is done. And if you want to have that happiness and that quality of life and that enjoyment, and to be able to let go and forgive yourself and forgive them, or just move on with your life in a healthy way, this is such an important thing to do. This to me is the real work. This is the hard work. And just like she said, just a small percentage of people are willing to do this. Going to therapy is a great thing. But I happen to believe that there is an energetic portion of this that has to be removed out of your field. And I'm talking about your auric field and that energy field around you, where the trauma can still be in there in that way. Let me ask you, I want to go into the ethereal piece of this, which is, the subtle body. I'm Barbara Brennan classic trained, and graduated from her school. So my knowledge of chakras and everything, and the auric field is, I think, very well done. But what I want to say is, when you've gotten to the point where there's therapy and you decide, okay, I'm going to go see a healer now, I'm going to have somebody that can actually work with me to remove the trauma from my body. What's the next thing they do? Where would they go? And where can they find you specifically if that's what they're looking to work with you as well?
Oh, it's a fantastic question because there are a lot of energy healers, Reiki, and other healers
Yep.
that will help um, remove trauma from the body.
Hmm.
The way that I have come to do it over the years, and I consider it just a complete gift. I had someone earlier this year tell me I'm using seventh dimensional healing techniques. I don't know where they came from. I meditate a lot. I mean, it's just blessing and being
Yeah.
connected. But when the thing that's beautiful is there's only so much that you can do with your mind. People always think mindset and that sort of thing is everything, and there's only so much can be done with the mind. The rest of
That's
the
right.
trauma, the spirit can't be accessed. The mind can only take you about 50% of the way.
Agreed.
So that's where, if you want to be done, there's more to it beyond therapy. It's not that the therapy's it's absolutely crucial, and there's more to do after that. And that's this piece where to energetically go in, instead of sitting and when I work with someone one-on-one, I can feel it in their body. I can say, I feel a massive amount of fear in your third chakra. I want you to drop your attention there, look at it from the inside out, and we see what it is. Are you willing to let that go? If they say no, they want to hold on to it, that's up to them. They have free will. If they want it pulled out, I can energetically just pull it right out, and it is gone. You talk about the difference between like understanding and embodying. At the end, it is gone as if it was not there. And what I always tell people is I'm going for alignment with the soul. I'm not going for any secondary results. People get great secondary results. I had one woman whose asthma went away after one session, someone whose hip pain of 22 years went away, people who've, made more money, whatever, all kinds of secondary results. But we're just going for alignment. We're just going for pulling the trauma out of you as a divine being.
So I want to talk to everybody right now who's just tilted their head and went, impossible. So let me just tell you, this is an MD, right? So if you have a gallbladder and it's not doing well, can they pull the gallbladder out of you and you live just fine? Well, guess what? They can pull trauma out of your energy and you can live just fine. The thing is, a lot of people think, well, you can't pull trauma out of someone, or you can't pull some energetic negativity out of someone. Well, it's interesting because when you do surgery, you can even pull a spleen out. You can take away a kidney out, and the body still functions better without that maybe diseased organ in there. We know how to pull disease out of the physicality, and thus we also know how to pull dis-ease out of our energetic physicality as well. And the key thing for everybody listening is that you do have a physicality and an energetic physicality. We are talking with an MD who is also a healer, somebody that understands the energetics of the subtle body or the energetic body, and how to be able to remove the trauma out of your energetic field. It's just this is what healership is about. There is an act of intention that she just talked about for those listening, where you have to be ready and willing to let go of it. Because if you're not willing to let go of it, it won't happen. So if you're not willing to let go of it, my question to you would be, what way is it serving you? In what way is it serving you? Because there might be a healthier way to do that. So removing these things from the energy field is a science. It's not woo woo, it's a science, in my opinion. And I'm so glad you're bringing this up. And I'm so glad we're talking about this in this way, because sometimes there is like residue, even though you healed it in your mind. You went to the therapist and you healed it in your mind. that has nothing to do with healing it in your body. It has 50% of it healing in your body. The other 50% of it is letting your body release it as well. And this is so important what we're talking about. I'm enjoying this conversation so much, Melissa. And I want to just say that um, that trauma in all of its forms right now is so chaotic and harmful on the stress of the body that when you are talking about removing it from them, sometimes, especially if you're empathic, you can't even feel you because you're feeling all the
Everybody.
other trauma that is around you. And the question is that we asked is, how do they meet their inner divinity? Well, once these traumas are moved out of the energy field, is that like the doorway or a doorway inside where they can begin to feel who they actually are, because you're not your thinking and you're not your mind and you're not your ego. So shouldn't the question be, who are you?
Oh, absolutely. And you can't get to that connection without pulling out the trauma, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like being in a funhouse mirror room, or you're seeing everything through these warped lenses and distortions, and you
Yeah.
can't even identify with who you are because you've got all these beliefs piled on top of you that you're not good enough, or you're whatever it is. And so extracting that trauma, you just get such clarity, and moving forward from a place of clarity is so astounding. You had asked
Mm-hmm.
how people do this work with me. One of the things that I've just recently started doing is Monday mornings, a group healing session on Zoom webinar. So people can show up in their pajamas.
Mm.
They're not going on camera. And I will sit and pull trauma for the session for everyone who's sitting there. I'm actually making the first Monday of the month free. So if anyone wants to
Nice.
do it this coming Monday, they can let me know. Because when I do one-on-one work with people, we make so much progress through the daily alignment that I'm doing for them energetically. The sessions, they text and they'll say, I have a headache. And 2 seconds later, I've cleared it and it's gone. And they don't have the headache now before their big meeting or before their big interview, or
Mm.
they felt a cold coming on and now it's gone, or whatever that case may be. But it's being able to clear real time. Here's what the trauma is. And I can always pose this back to them. Oh, the reason you had the headache was because your fear of failure kicked up. So you address that. I'll clear the headache.
Beautiful.
You have your meeting, and we'll talk about that in your next session.
See, and we don't even think the thought that I'm not good enough can do that. But I want to tell you something, because she just hit something that I want to tag in. One of the things that I know is that everybody has an attractor field. Everyone just has an attractor field. And if your attractor field is mucked up with unconscious trauma stored in your energy field, what are you attracting?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that's the point of having that clearing in that way. What is it that you're going to be attracting? Even if you think, the law of attraction, you can't think your way through this. I want to hear this. Trauma is not something you can think your way through. It's not thinky and you'll get better. Trauma is absolutely a completely different accessing of who you are. It is the energetic you, it is that part of you that can heal. So your mind cannot heal. It can change thoughts. I like this thought better than this thought. I like this belief better than this belief, but it doesn't have some sense of healership. Your healership comes from you, your inner, your soul, your divine beingness. And if you're trying to thinking your way through this, can you see how you're not touching your divine beingness? The point I'm trying to make is your attractor field isn't in your mind. It's in your divine beingness. And your divine beingness has all of that subtle body, all of that auric field, all of that energy. And if you aren't in touch with that piece of you, then you're leaving 50% of you not even aware of. Part of who you actually are is that divine beingness. And I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying when you say, how that thought caused the headache. That's the physical feeling, the physicalness, because it's not just headaches that it causes all kinds of stress related illnesses. It can cause heart attacks. It can cause all of these things that can be removed out of the energy field working with someone who is willing. And I want to bring this back up because Lisa's right. It's definitely a process, but worth the work. And what we're taught to do, that she said earlier, and I want to talk about this, is, and then, we'll wrap up the show. So if you guys have any questions for her, ask them now. But I want to go to the point where you talked earlier about how we're taught to avoid, and our mind is taught to avoid this whole sphere of things that you go watch a movie, go read a book, go for a jog, go punch a punching bag, go out with your friends, have a drink, have a volume, smoke a joint, that do something other than feel your feelings, and even try and connect with this try and connect with this thing that you are, that is beyond your thinking mind.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the things that, and I think about the continuum going from survival to thriving, through recovery to thriving to being anti-fragile. And different things work at different phases. And so it's very common for therapists even to give people the advice, get a new hobby, make some new friends, find some way to distract yourself. And when you're in survival and you're not wanting to get out of bed for the day, or you're not able to get up and go to work, or you're just sitting around crying all day, or you're super anxious or whatever, that is fantastic advice to be able to function and to be able to start moving. But when you cross that 50% line, like Vicki and I have both talked about, where the mind no longer works and you're in the realm of the spirit, distraction is the single worst thing that you can do, because you're taking yourself away from what's really there. And the reality is we all have trauma. It's not just people who've been exposed to narcissists, or not just people who are injured in the Christmas parade or in the school shootings. We all have trauma, and the way that we know that trauma is sitting in our body is by the thoughts that come up. I'm scared to speak up about this because they might not like me. I'm scared to do this because I might not be good enough, or those kind of things that happen or come up all the time. Those right there are evidence that there's trauma sitting in your body that needs to come out. And the only way that it will come out is by paying attention to it. Distracting from it will take you farther away.
That's beautiful. Thank you. This has been the most incredible conversation, and I'm so grateful that you were on the show. Where can they connect with you? How can they work with you? Where can they find you?
Oh, excellent. Thank you. They can email me if you want in on Monday's free healing session. Just email me at melissa@melissakaltmd.com, and I'll get you hooked up. If there's someone who's listened, who's resonated with the narcissistic abuse and wants to know more there, join me at narclesslife.com.
Narclesslife.com. Can you put all this in the feed for me, someone?
And then my handle on pretty much every platform is Melissa Kalt MD. So that's another way to connect with me then, through Messenger, YouTube, Medium, Quora, Instagram.
You're everywhere.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being willing to do the work that you do, because it is a time in the world right now where you are so needed, and your services are needed, and people need to find answers. So if you are a narcissist and you are if you are a narcissist abuse or victim, Monday free healing session, email the Narcless Life, NARCLESS, narclesslife.com, Narcless Life. Also, MelissaKaltMD.com, MelissaKaltMD.com. Write back feedback from here. We have, thank you, so glad I caught this today. And if you want to literally talk with her, I'm going to put this. It is Melissa at MelissaKaltMD.com. Melissa at MelissaKaltMD.com. And that is going to be, yes, so glad you joined us. Thank you, everybody. Melissa, thank you for your amazing work that you do. And all I want everyone to know is if you're suffering, you don't need to reach out to Melissa, reach out and get those things that you need. And I just want to let everyone know today is the coffee break show. And all we have to do is hear the music now. See you guys later. Bye.